Hello, my name is Megs Reynolds, and I'm the Executive Director of the Do More Agriculture Foundation. We are the national voice and champion for mental health in Canadian agriculture. You are joining us today on our Talk It Out series, and this month our topic is emotional shock. Joining me today is Cyle Stewart. Kyle, I'm going to hand it over to you for further introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Megs. I'm happy to be on here talking about this. So I ranch in southwest Saskatchewan with my wife and our daughters and my wife's parents. We're running beef cattle here. There's no grain or nothing. We're strictly cow calf operation. We moved here in 17 from BC. That decision was kind of made with Eric and I wanting to be able to do this on our own, and it seemed like there was a bit more practical management opportunities over here. So I grew up on acreage just outside of Kamloops, BC. I started rodeoing when I was 5, and started riding steers later on when I was 10, and then graduated up to bulls at 15. And then I made the decision to quit at 19 riding bulls. I had too many concussions, or enough concussions, I guess. So I made that decision. So when I did that, a friend of mine's dad, he got me a job logging, which took me to Merritt area, and I was logging there for 5 years, and that's where I met Erica. So that was in 2011. And convinced her that we should start dating. And so at that time she was teaching part-time, and she was ranching the other time. And then the school she was working at, it shut down, and so she just stayed home ranching full-time after that. And then in 14 we got married. 15 we had our first daughter, Macy, and at that time we made the decision that I'd kind of take her spot with helping her dad, and then she could stay home and be a mom. So in 15, we kind of decided to start looking at different options for moving. Started looking at places in Saskatchewan, and it was a very interesting experience. We got to see a lot of the province over the 3 years of looking, and it was pretty neat to see the different parts of the province and the miles we put on doing it. And we ended up in 16, our place had sold, and so going into the winter of 16, we still hadn't found a place, and we knew we had to be out by April of 17. So we were on a scramble to find a place, and so January of 17 we kind of got one nailed down, and which is the place we're at here now. But when I was on my drive home back to Merritt from looking at this place, and I'd just been out by myself. I was kind of doing some scouting, and then if I found something, then the rest of the family would come out and give their thoughts on it. So I was headed home from a solo trip out here, and I got the call that one of my friends I'd rodeoed with had committed suicide, and it was later confirmed that it was the first case of CTE in a bull rider. And so that was, I mean, if you want to talk about emotional shock, I mean, that fits the description right there, hearing about that. So it was, I mean, I think the first real shock for me was having to give up riding bulls, and that was a tough decision because that was my decision, but I knew for myself it was the right one. So I would say that was kind of the first traumatic experience for me, was making that call and living with it. And then, later on hearing about that friend of mine, and then it kind of goes on from there. But yeah, that would be the first couple events.
Yeah. When you learned about your friend dying by suicide, did you realize at that point that that's what you were experiencing, that that was an emotional shock for you, or were you just kind of in the emotions of it and not understanding kind of what was going on?
Yeah, I don't think I understood what was going on. I mean, you felt pretty sick, and I mean, not puking or nothing, but you had that eerie feeling in you, and it really made you, for myself, it made me reflect on my own life, and kind of what to be thankful for, and maybe to watch out for different signs or things like that.
Hmm. How long do you feel that you stayed in kind of that place of feeling sick before you were able to make a conscious decision of, okay, I need to do something to take care of me or to be able to process what's just gone on in this loss I've just had?
Well, that's a it's a tough question. I mean, um, the bad thing about having a bunch of concussions is your memory sucks. So I can't give you a really good answer on that. But I don't think it was like, hit this date and everything went back to normal. It was a long, kind of gradual. If there was a back to normal, I don't know. You go from go through that, hearing that, and then try and figure things out. And um, I don't think there is a timeline that I experience or remember.
Yeah. Well, and it's on top of life as well, right? Like it's never just that there's that one thing. You talked about how you're in the process of having to find a new ranch essentially, and that you had a date on that. And so I mean, I can't imagine what's all involved in moving a ranch and a farming operation, let alone having a loss like that in the middle of that process.
Yeah, I think now that you say that, I think that was a distraction. I think at that time, so that was January when that happened, and we had to be out by April. So I mean, and we were starting to calve in February then. So I mean, there was a million things on your mind, and whether that was good or bad, I don't know. I mean, because I think partially you just put those emotions aside because you got other things to be doing,
Mhm.
and then it maybe boils over somewhere else. So
Yeah, I think we see that, well, in life in general, but in agriculture too, where when something happens and it is that emotional shock, and that could be different for all of us. It could be, losing your crop in a storm. It could be having livestock wiped out because of disease or having issues with trade barriers or what have you. But that, when that event is happening, we're not always able to hit pause and process and do the things that maybe would be recommended to us by a mental health professional because we have to get through the reality of what's going on and putting the farm and its needs first.
that's right. Yeah.
Were there, just with everything you had going on, was there signs that you could tell that there was stuff like your mental wellness wasn't in the best place? Um, Or did you just kind of know throughout it that that was something you were going to have to kind of work on once you were able to get through some of those things and get to the place where you could kind of process and work through what had gone on?
Yeah, like that's such a tough time to remember for me because there was so much going on. But um yeah, it I mean, to this day, it's still you still feel those emotions of getting that information, getting that phone call, and um, I mean, I don't know if it's an excuse or what, but if it's a combination of concussions and all these traumatic events or what. But I mean, it's a every day you feel it. It seems like there's something reminds you of something or a smell or whatever. Um, and for us, I mean, it just seems like we took a beating there for a while. One thing would happen after another. So like I said, we had moved in April 17. We brought 8 liner loads of cows and calves from BC to Saskatchewan. We brought 4 low beds of equipment, and I think 2 of household or yard items and stuff. And this place that we bought, it was basically a start over rebuild place, as far as infrastructure goes. So we were figuring stuff out as far as what fences were needing to be rebuilt the first, and water, and we were so damn busy learning and figuring stuff out and planning and getting building sites picked out. We put up a horse barn and a shop and a calving barn. Like we had it hired out, and then your infrastructure for all those, water and electrical, and we were going pretty steady. And so that was April of 17 we got here. June of 17, we were coming home from a local fundraiser and event, and we were sitting in the driveway when we got home, and I had grabbed my daughter's leg to tickle her. She was in the back seat, just messing around with her. And at that time she was 2, she just turned 2, and her leg felt swollen. And so I called my sister, who was a nurse in BC, and I asked what we should do. And she said, well, if it's still like that in the morning, maybe take her to the hospital. So we ended up doing that. The next morning went into the hospital there, and they didn't know what was going on, why this swelling was there. And through tests and stuff, about a month later, it was confirmed it was cancer that she had. It was causing the swelling. And so they put her on a 54-week treatment protocol. And so, at that time, we were 3 months into being at a new place, trying to get it set up. And then this happens. And the roller coaster of emotions that you just experienced from January to it have been July at this time. Geez, it was exhausting. And then, now you've got this challenge ahead of you of this 54-week treatment protocol. And we were in the hospital basically every week for 54 weeks. And so we went through that. We went through the treatment. That was chemo and radiation with Macy. And so August of 18, she was declared cancer free. And then 2 weeks later, so we that was like our goal, was to make it to that point. That was, and we made it there. She did exceptionally well for all the stuff Macy did, for all the stuff that she had to go through and everything else. And then 2 weeks later, she wasn't quite feeling right, so we ended up taking her back to the hospital, and we were in the hospital for a couple nights, or no, it was about a week, I guess. And she ended up passing away due to the complications that the treatment had caused. And so, basically from 17 to 18, there was a lot of stuff happened that I don't feel we had time to absorb or comprehend or understand. So Macy passed away in August of 18, and at that time, it turns out Erica was pregnant, and which was just a blessing in disguise, because I don't know if we would have had more kids after that, being the experience with our first. So Hazel, our middle daughter, was born in March of 19, and I can't remember if it was that year or the next year, but my sister had gone in. She had a mole removed. It was as simple as a mole removed, and they ended up doing a biopsy on it. Just there was no indications of anything being wrong. It was just, we removed this mole, we might as well do a biopsy on it. It come back as cancerous, and so she went through her treatment for that and ended up beaten that. Like, and like I said, I can't remember if I was 19 or 20 that happened, but um, so she got over that, and then in November of 20, we had our third daughter, Risa, and I mean, I feel at that point things were kind of getting back to a normal for us. You know, we had our family that we'd always wanted. We'd been, 3 years at this place. We were getting things we thought figured out, and management wise, and learning lots, and we were in a really good place, I felt. And then 21 March of 21 March of March of 22, I was cleaning out snow out of the corrals so we were getting ready to start calving, and I was in the machine clearing out snow. I get a phone call from my sister, and her cancer had come back, and it was terminal, and they gave her 6 months. And I mean, the shock of that, of hearing that, it's like all this junk emotion that you feel like you just overcome comes crashing down on you. And so we whipped over to BC to see her at that time, and she was in the hospital then, and we went over to see her and my family, and um come back, because we were starting a cab first week of April, so we had to be back for that. I mean, we're so lucky that we do this with Erica's parents. So in all these situations of us having to leave, at least someone was here and could take care of things. I mean, I couldn't imagine going through the cancer treatments, the going to see my sister, all these things without having Erica's parents here. So I mean, with my sister, we knew there was a basically an end date, right? And that was different than what we experienced with Macy. We had no idea that was going to happen.
That still must have been so hard though, like to have gone through what you went through in the loss of your daughter, and then to have your sister come back and say, this is where I'm at, and to have it be cancer as well, and just bringing back all of that again, and that trauma from your daughter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a horrible feeling to have it happen once, and then it's even worse when all those, and I'm gonna say they're undealt with emotions the second time. For myself, I can say that. I mean, yeah, and I mean, this industry, you're always got distractions, right? You can, like you said before, you got 50 things to do a day, so it's easy to put your emotions aside and have a distraction. Yeah, that was, I don't like, it's all bad. I don't know what's worse though, you know, with my sister knowing that there was an end date, and I had been talking to a counselor, because trying to deal with all this stuff, and that was one thing that she had suggested was, look at the differences of these two situations. The one is you know the outcome of your sister, and you can make anything you regret anything you regret not doing, losing your daughter, you can do in this situation. You can tell your sister something that you hope she knows before she passes. You can do something with her. I feel that was helpful, and I tried to look at it that way. And so we were back over in BC in June, and middle of June, I guess it was, and no, July, sorry. And so at that time, she was basically in a hospital bed at mom and dad's house, and she had a stroke at that time too, so she had lost the mobility in her left side, and so she needed help with basic living, I guess, right? Because you couldn't get out of bed on her own, couldn't go to the washroom on her own. And I ended up staying for a week longer. Erica brought the girls home. They come home on their own, and then I come back a week later. But in that week of sitting, with my sister next to her in that bed, I mean, you sure learn to appreciate what to be thankful for. As far as, I can get up and I can go to the washroom on my own. I can go to the kitchen, make a meal. I can go outside and mow the lawn or whatever. Um, and I tried to really hold on to those thoughts in that experience. As bad as things get in your day-to-day life, be thankful that you're not in that situation. And no matter how bad you think you have it, there's someone else has it a lot worse. Um, so
Sounds
that's what I
like
try.
that's been a coping mechanism for you through everything.
For sure, yeah. Um, and I think the biggest thing that keeps me, call it level-headed or not level, I guess, focused or on what's going on is our girls. Our Hazel and Reese, our middle and youngest daughter. I mean, to see them, they're so involved with what we do here every day. And, as bad and as hard as things get sometimes, I mean, if you focus on them, the things they know at 4 and 2 years old. The other day we were picking replacement heifers, and so we had 114 in a bigger pen, and then we'd bring in, about 30 to a smaller pen, and then out of that pen we'd take out 10 at a time, and we'd walk through them and we'd pick our replacements. Well, Hazel, our 4-year-old daughter, I asked her if she wanted to bring them 10 in out of the group of 40, and I kind of explained to her what to do before she went in the pen. And I mean, she did exactly what I told her to do. She went up the fence and down the other fence until she had 10 kind of cut out, and she brought them 10 in. And she was just glowing. She was so excited about what she'd done. And I'm like, that's what you do this for. You gotta have a goal or something to strive for. And to see the look on her face, and how much she knows, and how well she can read cattle. I mean, that makes everything all worth it to me.
What are some of the other coping mechanisms that you've used? I know when we've chatted previously, you've talked about how you had a good friend at one point kind of pull you aside and talk about the importance of having conversations and being there to have conversations and opening up and being vulnerable with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a handful of friends that, I mean, if I'm having a bad day or something, I can call them, any one of them. They know everything I've been through. They know, the type of my personality or whatever. I know them the same way. And I mean, shoot, sometimes them conversations turn into hours, just talking. And I feel that's having that, handful of friends that you can just spill everything to. I know that sure makes a difference for me. I think the other thing that helps is mine and Erica's relationship. Through everything we've been through, as bad as it's been, I feel it's opened up our communication. We talk about everything. We share everything. We've look what we've got through together. I mean, that's from being able to communicate. Um, I think that's been super helpful too.
Yeah, it's communication is a big one, and I think sometimes it gets overlooked, especially in kind of the mental wellness side of everything. But it's whether it's with your partner or having that group of friends. And I love that you talked about that because I would say women are more prone to having that group of friends that they feel comfortable having conversations with, but men don't necessarily have that. But it's so important to have that group that you can talk to and they can talk to you because it's life is hard. I mean, you've just shared your story and thank you for doing that. And we don't get through life without challenges. And that doesn't mean that we're diagnosable with a mental illness, but it means we're going to at times be in places where we need help, whether that's talking to a friend or talking to a professional who's going to help us, give us tools to work through what we're going through. We can't do everything alone.
No, that's right. And even like this winter was a long, hard, cold winter, and for whatever reason, it was hell on our on equipment for us this winter. And there was one day, it was -40, and I had a grapple hose blow on a tractor, and so I get it in the shop and take it off and go to town and get a new grapple hose made, put it on, go back to feeding. The other grapple hose breaks, so go tractor in the shop, go back to town, get another hose, and you know I had some time to get on the phone, being as I had to make 2 trips to town, and I called a friend in Alberta who's a rancher, and they had blown a hose that day, and I called another friend in BC who ranches, and they had a fuel problems with their tractor that day, and it was just not that I wish any bad on anybody, but it was like, well, I'm not alone in having equipment problems and a bad day. I mean, if you're in this industry, I mean, you're running equipment, you run that risk every day, right? Some days she piles up on you, but
Yeah, for sure. Um, are there any ways that you think what you've been through has changed you as a person?
absolutely. I if this was if I we wouldn't be having this conversation if it was 8 years ago.
Mhm.
I would have, I don't know what I would have done, but I'm if I see someone going through something, or I know they are going through something, I'll reach out and ask them how they're doing, or just sometimes just talking, just shooting the bull is all you need to do. And I mean, I wouldn't have done that before. um I think that's been a big change for how it's changed me. And like I mentioned before, how well Erica and I communicate now.
Yeah.
So I mean, as unfortunate as all these things are, there are some good things to come out of it.
Well, and I mean too, like again, thank you for joining us and sharing your story because we really need to hear from, multiple people and, not just people that have all different backgrounds and, are engaged different ways in the industry and stuff to be able to connect. Because I can share my story and it's some people are going to be able to connect with it, but not everybody. And you being, willing and open and to be vulnerable and to share your story, that's going to help so many people be able to connect and say, I'm not alone. Even just in what you've touched on, there's been so much in our chat today, but just, yeah, for people that are at different places in their life and in the industry to say, wow, like this is, if you can talk about stuff, if you can call up a friend and check in on them and start conversations, then maybe that's something they can do too.
For sure. And I mean, I don't think anyone should compare their situation to someone else's. I mean, we're every producer is different. In like every cow calf producer is different from the next one. Let alone a broiler farm to a hog farm, right? I mean, you can't compare much there. But so I just want people to not get stuck on comparing to someone else. I mean, everyone's struggles are different, everyone's tolerance is different. So don't minimize if you think that your problems aren't extreme. It doesn't mean they're still not going to bother you or take their toll on you. So I feel that's important. Don't compare.
That is such an important piece, and I'm so glad you touched on it because when I do all the workshops and stuff, that's one of the things I talk about is being able to validate when someone else shares with you because that's their truth, but that's something we need to do with ourselves because we're usually so quick to say, well, I shouldn't have reacted this way or this shouldn't be so hard for me or everything else that we say, but to validate what we're feeling and what we're experiencing. And sometimes it might just be something that seems small, but because of everything else that's going on, it's not small because of our capacity. And that's important to realize.
That's right. And I mean, this might be a coping mechanism too, but I often compare what's frustrating me or not going right to someone in a third world country, just trying to find enough food to eat that day or find, somewhere to spend the night or whatever. I mean, those are problems that we're not faced with, and people in that situation are every day. Yet our suicide rates in North America are higher than those third world countries.
Yeah, things to be aware of for sure.
Yeah. So I just always try and, see how bad your problems really are. Are you going to go in the house tonight and have a big meal? Are you going to be sleeping in a warm bed? Probably.
Yeah. All I will add to that is like, it's great to have perspective, but also like allow yourself the space and grace to process. So don't see that as like, well, someone else has it worse, so I can't have time to feel or to go through what I'm going through. But
For
it's
sure.
for sure great to have perspective when you're meeting
Yeah.
with challenges.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to add to the topic of emotional shock and just, our conversation today?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been said before that the worst thing that can happen to a parent is losing a child, and I don't disagree with that. But I think something that's helped me get through that as well is I'm not the first person, or Eric and I are not the first parents to have gone through that. I mean, I've got relatives who've gone through the same thing. I've got friends I rodeoed with. I mean, Neil Armstrong, George Strait, Vince Neil. I mean, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon. There are other people who have, dealt with it, and there will continue to be people to deal with it. So, just to, yeah, you're not the only one going through it, and I feel that's applicable to every scenario.
Yeah, I would agree for that for sure. But it's so easy to feel like we are, right?
Yeah,
That we're totally on our own little island and no one else understands and no one's been there before.
that's right.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much again for joining today and for sharing everything you shared. I'm so sorry for all of the loss that you've had, especially in such a short amount of time, but we really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing with us today because I know it's going to help so many people.
Well, I hope so. Thanks for having me and taking the time.
For anyone looking to find out more information on mental health or mental health in agriculture, you can visit our website, domore.ag. We have a full resource page to help connect you to resources that are out there for support, as well as support lines. There's wellness tips and tricks, and you can also donate if you're looking to support mental health in Canadian agriculture. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.